A small frying pan, genuinely small, about 8 inches across. That's the first one, and it's the thing that made me start cooking properly again, after years of not bothering. Here's what it fixed. I had a big pan. Everyone has the big pan. It's the one you get in the set. And cooking 1 chop or 2 eggs in a big pan is a slightly depressing experience. The food sits in the middle of this enormous empty surface. The pan takes ages to heat, it's heavy to lift and heavier to wash, and the whole thing feels like a lot of production for one person's dinner. So I'd look at it and think, I'll just have toast. Then I bought a small one, 8 inches, and it heats in seconds, the food fills it, it's light enough to hold with one hand, and it washes in about 15 seconds. And I started cooking again. Not because I found willpower, because the equipment stopped arguing with me. That's really the theme of everything today. When you live alone, the thing standing between you and a decent meal is almost never motivation, it's friction. And nearly all of that friction comes from a kitchen that was designed for a family of 4. Hi, by the way. Come in, sit down. I've been cooking for one for a long time now, and it took me an embarrassingly long stretch of years to realize I was doing it with the wrong tools and the wrong habits. So today, 9 things in my kitchen that are there specifically because it's just me, and I'll be honest about the ones that took me a while to admit I needed. Number 2. A 1-cup coffee maker, or whatever your version is. I made a full pot of coffee for one person for years, and drank 2 cups and poured the rest away every single morning and never once questioned it because that's what a coffee maker is. Now I make 1 cup at a time. The good coffee, 1 cup, made fresh. And the actual saving isn't the coffee, it's the not standing there at 11 in the morning pouring cold coffee down the sink, which was a small daily reminder that the kitchen was set up for someone else's life. Whatever your version is, a teapot too big for one, a kettle you fill to the top for a single cup. Right size it. It's a small thing, and it removes a small daily friction, and this whole list is small daily frictions. Number 3. Glass containers with lids that actually match. Not the drawer of mismatched plastic. I threw all of mine out, and I don't regret it for a second. Here's why this matters more when you cook for one than for a family. When you cook for 4, the food gets eaten. When you cook for one, you are always dealing with leftovers. Half a portion, the extra serving, the bit you didn't finish. Leftovers are not an occasional event for us, they're the entire system. So the containers stop being clutter and become the most used equipment in the kitchen. Glass because you can see what's in it, which means you actually eat it instead of discovering it 3 weeks later. Matching lids because the daily 2 minutes of digging through a drawer, holding a container up to lids, is a genuinely stupid way to spend your life. And a few different sizes, because half an onion doesn't need a soup container. Number 4. A very sharp small knife, and only a couple of knives total. I don't have a block of 15 knives. I've got 3, and I use 2 of them. The one that matters is a small sharp one, a paring knife, or a small utility knife. Because when you're cooking for one, you're doing small work, half an onion, 1 tomato, a bit of ginger. Wrestling a big chef's knife through a single mushroom is awkward, and awkward is what stops you. And sharp is not optional, it's a safety thing. A dull knife slips. It requires force, and force plus a slip is how you cut yourself. So get them sharpened, or buy one of those little pull-through sharpeners and use it every month or so. If your hands aren't as strong as they were, and mine aren't, a properly sharp small knife does the work for you. Number 5. A kitchen scale, and I resisted this one for a long time. I thought scales were for baking, or for people being very precise about diets, and I wanted nothing to do with either. What changed my mind was pasta. Because a portion of dry pasta for one person is a genuinely difficult thing to eyeball. Everybody overshoots. Everybody. You put in what looks like a reasonable amount, and you end up with a bowl for 3, and then you either eat it all or bin it. Same with rice, same with grains. They all double or triple when cooked, and our eyes are terrible at it. 30 seconds with a scale, and that stops. And the reason I mention it isn't calories, it's waste. I was throwing away real money in cooked food that nobody was going to eat. Now I cook what I'm going to eat, and it costs me one small weighing. Number 6. A half-sized cutting board. Silly little thing, and I love it. The big board is heavy, it doesn't fit in the sink properly, and it takes up the whole counter for the sake of one carrot. So I've got a small light one that lives out on the counter permanently, and because it's out, and it's easy, I use it. The big one comes out maybe twice a month. There's a pattern in this that took me years to notice. Whatever is easiest to reach is what you'll actually use. So the small, light, easy things live on the counter, and the heavy production equipment lives in a cupboard. That one principle has done more for how I eat than any recipe. Number 7. A freezer with a system, not a graveyard. This is the big one, and it's what makes cooking for one actually work, rather than just being manageable. Here's the shift. I stopped thinking of the freezer as long-term storage, and started thinking of it as my second self doing the cooking. When I make something, I don't make one portion, I make 4, and 3 go straight into the freezer in those glass containers, portioned for one, before I even sit down to eat. So on a Wednesday when I'm tired and I'd otherwise have toast for dinner, there's a proper meal that takes 4 minutes. But, and this is the part everyone skips, label it with the date, masking tape and a marker. Because an unlabeled freezer becomes a graveyard of grey mystery blocks that you're vaguely afraid of and eventually throw away. I did that for years. The label is what turns a freezer full of food into a freezer full of dinners. Number 8. Half-size everything at the shop, even if it costs more per ounce. This one goes against everything we were taught, and I want to make the case for it properly. The big bag is cheaper per pound. That's true, but if you're one person, the big bag of spinach turns to slime, the big bag of rice sits for a year, the family size anything gets half used, so the cheaper per pound is not cheaper, it just moves the waste to the bin, where you don't see it as a cost. I buy the smaller bag. I buy loose vegetables, one at a time, exactly what I need. 3 potatoes, not a 5-pound sack. And at the meat counter I ask for 1 portion, which they'll do quite happily, and which took me an absurdly long time to work up to asking for. I'm quite sure I spend less overall now, and I know for a fact I bin less. And number 9. Something that makes the meal feel like an occasion. I've saved this for last because it's not equipment, but it might be the most important thing on the list. I eat off a real plate, at the table. With a cloth napkin, which I know sounds very grand, it isn't. It's one napkin I use for a few days and throw in the wash. Sometimes there are flowers on the table from the grocery store, the cheap ones by the door. And here's why. Because the honest danger for a lot of us isn't that we eat badly. It's that eating slowly stops being a thing you do and becomes a thing you get out of the way, standing at the counter, out of the pan, in front of the television. And once that becomes the pattern, food goes from being one of the pleasures of the day to being maintenance. Cooking for one does not mean eating like an afterthought. I'm still worth a plate. I'm still worth sitting down. And that little bit of ceremony, which costs nothing at all, is the difference between feeding myself and looking after myself. So there are the 9. Small pan, 1 cup coffee, glass containers, a sharp small knife, a scale, a small board, a freezer with a system, half-size shopping, and a proper plate at the table. And when I look back at all of it, the thing I'd most want you to take away is this. For years I thought the problem was me, that I was lazy about cooking, that I'd lost interest in food, that this was just what happens when there's nobody else to cook for. It wasn't any of that. I was running a kitchen built for a family, on my own, and losing a little battle with it 3 times a day. Changed the tools and the habits, and the interest came straight back. It had never actually gone anywhere. So tell me yours, because I know there are things I haven't thought of. What's the one thing in your kitchen that makes cooking for one easier? Or the trick you worked out that nobody told you? Put it down in the comments. Those threads are always my favorite, and I've picked up at least 3 of the things on this list from you lot. And if you like this kind of practical, Honest talk about living on your own. You're very welcome here. Give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to stay, and I'll see you next time. Take good care of yourself. Bye for now.